Week 4 in Julian Council, we have a lot to talk about after this loss for the Panthers. Playing the Patriots today up in Foxborough. Julian, it is, first of all, a stark difference between the Panthers team we saw out on the field here in Charlotte a week ago versus what we saw in Gillette Stadium today. Obviously, it's a different team. It's a different game plan, different preparation, different player availability. But this team did not, of course, put the same sort of look out there. What was different today?
Yeah, Danielle, I know you haven't been here for too long, but here in Carolina, we come to understand that the good times, they only last for so long. And typically only a week, like we saw last week, as Carolina won 30-0 in a just dominant win against the Atlanta Falcons, where they were really not that great offensively, but good enough, scored in the opening possession last week, and they were able to cash in on Mike Jackson interception a week ago. They were excellent defensively, and they were great on special teams. Look at today, the offense left a lot to be desired. They did score in the opening drive, but after that, nothing until the end of the game when Andy Dalton was in at quarterback. The defense was right back to its old ways. And in special teams, quite frankly, was a disaster with the missed field goal, the missed extra point, the punt return for a touchdown, another long punt return. That had been a decided advantage for Carolina, which that was a phase that they lost. And really, you look at all three phases, offensively, defensively, special teams, like that was a difference. They lost every single one of those phases this week after winning every single one of them last week in their win against Atlanta.
And you saw that opening drive, just to go back to that for a second, because that's something they've been really harping on, is that starting fast, really, they wanted to work on that, and they did it. And it looked like a pretty promising start, coming off maybe with a little bit of confidence after that Atlanta win. Things were looking good. Bryce, brought them down the field. They got for the touchdown. Defense with a 3-and-out right after that. Like, things looked good. Then it kind of all fell apart, as you mentioned. 42 unanswered. Let's talk on the defense first. Drake May, obviously he's a local guy, and he was able to orchestrate his offense to really just drive it home.
And it's not like Drake went out there and put up a big ton of numbers, explosive plays. Like, he was good. Don't get me wrong. Had a nice little Superman Cam Newton homage celebration when he had that touchdown. And he hit Stephon Diggs, who had a big day today for New England. But other than that, it was just them playing on short fields because Carolina constantly offensively got in New England territory and punted. I mean, they punted from the 43, from the 31. They missed from 37 yards. So it's not like New England had to drive down the field a ton today in this game, and they were just efficient. There was one drive where they ran the ball, multiple jet sweeps, where they were clearly trying to test. Josh McDaniels, the OC there in New England, was clearly trying to test what they had at outside linebacker with Patrick Jones II and DJ Wonnum both being out. And DJ Johnson couldn't run fit on one of those. Nick Scorton missed a clear tackle on one of those, and that led to a touchdown. You had Hunter Henry, who had a catch where he gets lost, and this has been a constant issue where Carolina's not been able to defend tight ends, where Shaw Smith-Wade, instead of tackling him or even just pushing him out of bounds, punches at the ball. And then Henry's just like jogging down the sideline. Didn't even look like he was sprinting.
Unfazed.
So a lot of the same issues where you're not in the right position to make tackles, get guys on the ground. You were not out there giving the kind of effort you need to. Just there was the same lack of execution that we had seen really in the first 6 quarters of the season against Jacksonville, Arizona defensively out there today.
Looking back to the offense for Carolina, I think we can also circle back, first of all, to that first play of the game.
Sure.
Demo, great 12-yard pickup. Out for the game, carted off. He gives the thumbs up. Of course, we want to make sure everyone's healthy and safe. All of a sudden, Carolina is down to 3 receivers. This is a room that, by the way, we were talking about all offseason, how deep they are. We're going to have to make cuts. There's so much depth to this receiver core. It was T-Mac, it was Hunter Renfrow, Bryson Tremaine pretty much by the end of this game. They got the tight ends involved a little bit more in this game than we've seen in previous. But what are you making of the situation with this receiving core? Of course, we're waiting on Leggett to maybe getting back into his form. A lot of people are wondering about Jimmy Horton Jr. and what that situation is like too. But Bryce only has so many options at this point.
Right, and that's one of the things where I'm sure we'll talk about later how much you put on Bryce Young, but I am a little concerned at this point in time at what they have at wide receiver. Now, I will give a lot of credit to what Tommy Trimble catching a touchdown today, Mitchell Evans having his first career touchdown reception in the NFL, and even James Mitchell, all 3 of those guys being involved with JT Sanders out, who's also a big part of the receiving core here overall, looking at wide receivers and tight ends in Carolina. So his absence, that can't be ignored. But they decided before the season to trade Adam Thielen in Minnesota. Now, they had to get the return that they wanted, and they also looked at the fact that they had Tetairoa McMillan, they had Xavier Legette, had Jalen Coker, all young guys who they had plenty of talent and like what they did either last year in the preseason to feel good about that trio. But immediately after Adam Thielen gets traded, we see Jalen Coker go down with the quad injury. He's yet to play this year. When we've seen Xavier Legette in the first 2 games, he's left a lot to be desired, where there's plenty of fans out there questioning and even the media asking, would he be benched? Now, he's not played the last 2 weeks, but I have serious concerns because outside of Tetairoa McMillan and then a couple of flashes there against Arizona from Hunter Renfrow, there's only been one guy that Bryce can lean on in this passing game out receiver, and that's McMillan. Bryson Tremaine, nice story there, but not really a guy that you want to be leaning on if you're going to be the kind of football team they want to be, and a lot of people want them to be in this city. So I'm not going to sit here and act like they made a mistake there with Thielen, because certainly he wanted to go. They like what they had. They could not have predicted the injury to Jalen Coker, but they do have some real concerns there until Legette comes back and shows them what they want to see, and until Coker comes back as well and plays up to the level even better than he played a year ago.
And minded, of course, T-Mac is that number 1 guy at this point. So obviously, every opposing team is putting their number 1 DB on him too. So you saw Christian Gonzalez making his season debut today with the Pats. They had some pretty fun matchups, of course. So not so many opportunities either when you're being defended by some of the best players in the NFL. We have to look at Bryce.
Sure.
His game today, on paper, it wasn't bad if you look at the numbers. He had 1 sack, no interceptions.
Yeah.
So progress on those fronts. There were, like you said before, some more to be desired. I liked how you said that. What would you kind of assess for Bryce's game today, and how much blame do you put on the quarterback play in this loss?
I mean, he has to take a level of blame because he is the starting quarterback here in Carolina, and the offense went out there when he was there and only put up 7 points and constantly failed in New England territory. Like, I think in the first half, they had 4 of their 5 drives were there in Pat's territory, and they came out with 6 points. Right. So that's just not going to win you games in the NFL. Then in the second half, when the game was, I suppose, still in doubt, they go turnover on downs. One of those where McMillan was open. Had he hit him in stride, that's a touchdown.
Right.
And then another one that also led to a turnover on down. So I look at Bryce. I still feel like he's somebody they can win games with. But I just look at the passing game overall. And I mentioned the wide receivers. We talked about that momentarily. But in his 32 starts, 20 of those games he's thrown for less than 200 yards passing. And in those games are 5 and 15. In this league, especially nowadays where obviously quarterbacks are getting paid a ton of money, receiver play is probably the best it's ever been. It's a passing league. You pass to win games nowadays, and the Panthers constantly are not able to do that.
Right.
And that is a concern that I have because it's been 3 years now. 2 full seasons. Last year he sat up for a little bit, but then like 4 weeks into the year now, you're looking at didn't throw for over 200 yards week 1, threw for a career high in week 2. Last week in a win, only 121 yards, 150 today. The passing game leaves a lot to be desired, and it's not just the quarterback, but clearly there's something there where you're just not getting what you want out of Bryce. So maybe it's the coaching, maybe it's the play calling. I don't know what it is, but you can't look at his performance today and feel that great about it. And you saw the frustration again as he slammed his helmet onto the bench after one of those drives ended up in that game. So I still have belief in him, but we're not seeing what you'd want to see at this point in time in year 3.
I want to get back to the play calling that you just brought up in a second because that's going to bring up another very interesting discussion. But looking at this game is interesting because you had 2 quarterbacks, both young, Drake going into his 2nd season in the league, Bryce into his 3rd, both guys who were drafted in the 1st round. Both have had 2 different coaches in their young careers too, so it's not like they've had a lot of continuity. We're seeing a lot of success right now out of Drake. Yes, it wasn't the most flashy game, but he looks to be solid. And there's a lot of confidence in their organization and their fan base that he is their guy of the future. Bryce, on the other hand, there's a little bit more questions, I'd say, around. What do you think the difference is between a player like Drake May and Bryce Young at this point early in their careers? Why the view publicly in within their team is maybe different?
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of confidence in Drake May coming out of North Carolina. Obviously a Charlotte guy out of Myers Park, so I've seen his career for a long time now, and I've thought that this is probably the best quarterback we've ever had come out of this area. And then when he got to Chapel Hill, he's outstanding. So I figured he would have success. And I think the biggest difference is the organization. Look at New England. How many Super Bowls did they win? 6? Back when Brady and Belichick were there.
Sure
and
did.
You look at the owner in Robert Kraft, one of the best owners in the NFL. Look at the owner here in Carolina, David Tepper. Organization goes from being a perennial, playoffs every other year kind of team, being about 500 to now one of the worst franchises in the NFL with the New York Jets. Like, that's the company you're keeping now. And it's not like the Jets ownership is one that's lauded every year in the National Football League. So Kraft, better owner, Tepper, still figuring it out, not doing a great job. Look at the head coach, Mike Vrabel. It didn't end well in Tennessee, more because he lost a power struggle and wanted Rand Carthon, a young GM, to be fired. And what do you know? The next year, Rand Carthon got fired and Amy Adams Strunk in Tennessee. Not a great owner. Right. And that team with Brian Callahan, worst team in the NFL. So clearly Vrabel, who had him as a number one seed in Tennessee with Ryan Tannehill at quarterback, really good head coach. Dave Canales, I have some questions about him. Even look at play caller. Josh McDaniels, say about what he is as a coach when he's a head coach. Really good play caller, has a proven track record, now of a young quarterback. And Dave Canales, also the play caller, right, did well with Baker Mayfield, but so did Liam Cohen.
Right.
And so is Josh Grizzard so far. So is it the play caller or is it the quarterback, and that Baker is elevating these guys and getting them hired in the NFL? So just structurally, the organization, you have the 6-time Super Bowl champion New England Patriots and the Carolina Panthers, who have never had a back-to-back winning seasons and haven't made the playoffs since 2017. And it doesn't look like it's going to happen this year either. So, yeah, it's the organization.
Mind you, I do think, though, it is a point that the Patriots, I would say, right now don't have necessarily studs offensively, weapons around May, but he's still making it work.
Yeah.
And, I mean, mind it, they're 2-2 to start their season. It's not like they're having this phenomenal year so far, but I do think it's not like they're, gifted all of these weapons for him to work around. But you brought up the topic of the day, and that is potentially this conversation around Dave Canales, maybe in terms of his role as a play caller, maybe his role in terms of being the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. He was questioned after this loss in the post-game press conference, and he was taking a lot of ownership over the mistakes. I think we said his words were that he is the common denominator across the problems. What do you make of comments like that? And do you think that can amount to anything else?
Yeah, I'm concerned about Dave Canales. And like you bring up what Drake May has around him compared to what Carolina, when healthy, will have around Bryce Young. But they are 2-2, yes, New England is. It's a one-score loss against the Raiders. It's a one-score loss against the Pittsburgh Steelers a week ago. You look at Carolina, they got blown out by Jacksonville. 3-1, just won in San Francisco today. So obviously a good football team. You're getting blown out by Arizona before you start scoring much points in garbage time, and then make that look more competitive than it actually was. And then, of course, you blow out Atlanta last week, and you get embarrassed again on the road today. So, maybe Drake doesn't have a lot around him, but clearly the coaching, the infrastructure is getting that football team collectively to play well. And yes, Dave Canales did say his own words, not my words, not your words, not anybody's, that he is the common denominator when things are not going well in all three phases. Does not want to change the play caller. He feels like he still is the right guy to move the offense forward. But you can't look at what he's done through these first 21 games and not be concerned. They're 6-15 under him. If you look at those 15 losses, including today, I would say 9 of those games, they weren't competitive. Maybe look at the game a year ago against Denver and say, well, they had some garbage time. Maybe they're competitive. No, they weren't. It was 28-7 going in the fourth quarter. You can look at the game against Atlanta last year where they ended up losing by 18, but it was a game in the middle of the fourth quarter where Andy Dalton threw an interception that they were in. But most of the time when they lose, they get blown out. And I was looking at this. In those 15 losses, their average margin of defeat is 18.2 points per game.
Yeah. That's
the worst by any Carolina Panthers head coach in history. George Seifert, who went 1-15 back in 2001, I believe, they were losing games like 1 or 2 or 3. They weren't getting blown out every single week like you would think a 1-15 team was. Dom Capers, who took over a franchise that was an expansion franchise back in 95, it was like 10.9 points every time they lost. Like, this guy's losing by 3 scores every time they lose. They don't look competitive. And you look at the offense, just the 3rd and 10 decision that before that punt return for a touchdown.
Sure.
Why not throw the ball in that situation? You see every week before the half, it's been 4 straight weeks where they've had the ball going in a 2-minute drill and they're running on 1st and 10. And they're not utilizing timeouts, no sense of urgency. It's gone fumble, punt, punt, punt. Like the middle 8, that's a point in time at the end of the first half, beginning of the second half, where you can win games. That's something that Bill Belichick believed in, and Carolina's not getting able to get that advantage. So I'm going to wait and see the next couple of weeks how they go against Miami, against Dallas, and against New York, the Jets. But I am concerned about Dave Canales and whether he is the right fit in Carolina.
There's that clip right now that's been circulating of David Tepper walking out of the game today, and he looked angry. And of course he's going to be angry when he's seeing the results like this.
Yeah.
If you were David Tepper, I'm going to put you on the hot seat. Is Dave on the hot seat in your mind?
I wouldn't go there at this point in time. Again, when I bring up that 9 out of the 15 losses, they have not been competitive. And you look at last year, week 1 and week 2, they didn't even look like they were prepared. You come back to this year with the continuity of your quarterback, offensive lineback, and new offensive weapons. They didn't look ready to play. Yeah, that concerns me. And then because this thing, David Tepper, he is to blame for all of this. Let's not forget that. He's probably tired of going out here and going on the road and being embarrassed for all these owners. It's his own fault because he's the one who hired Dave Canales. No one in the NFL wanted to interview Dave Canales 2 years ago, or I guess last year, except for the Carolina Panthers. And he took the job, which, go ahead. Generational wealth makes sense, your opportunity, maybe the only chance you get. He took it. But no one else wanted to talk to him. And David Tepper's put himself in a situation with hiring Matt Rule and firing Frank Reich after 11 games in the season to where not a ton of people are going to want this job other than you get a lot of money, especially after you likely get fired because Tepper has not done a great job of identifying who should be the general manager, not to put Dan Morgan on a hot seat, or Dave Canales so far at this point in time at head coach, Frank Reich, Matt Rule before that. I want to see what they look like moving forward because we did see some fight out of this team at the end of last season. It shouldn't take until week 11 to get there, but I would like to see how they perform moving forward in his next couple games against teams that are on a comparable level, and then even how they stack up when Buffalo comes to town, and that's going to look like Ralph Wilson Stadium South, unfortunately, in all likelihood, when they play the Bills here in Charlotte. Sorry, they all live here, but that will be a game I look to where if they continue to struggle and they get blown out against Buffalo with 70% Bills fans, that'll be much like a couple years ago when Matt Rule and his team got blown out in front of basically a home game for San Francisco. So I'm concerned. Not putting him on the hot seat yet, but we're getting close to that.
And like you mentioned, there's only so much, honestly, coaching can do in game. At the end of the day, it's going to be about the players you have. But it is that question, is it about the players you have? Is it about the coaching? But to kind of circle back to the combo of the two, the play calling. We talked about Dave being the guy right now. Do you think that's going to change? Do you think that could change?
It could change. I know Brad Idzik, who is his offensive coordinator and was his right-hand man when he was there in Tampa as the OC for one season as his wide receiver coach, who followed him here to Carolina. Like, he called some plays back during the preseason, even during training camp. He was calling the plays then. So he has experience doing it at that point in time. And Dave called the final preseason game against Pittsburgh. So you could do that. The offense is going to change, though. Like, if you don't get healthy, and they're already not healthy on the offensive line. They lost Chandler Zavala today, who's the backup right guard after Robert Hunt's going to be out likely for the season with the biceps there. So that does not help. I mean, obviously the receivers not being out there doesn't help. You're not really able to establish the run because you're always behind in these games. So they could bring in Brad Idzik. My guess is Dave Canales will still be a large part of the game plan. And that the offense will probably be the same because that's his guy. They're not going to change the offense in the middle of the season. Just like if they fire Jero Rivera, which fans want, it's not going to change the defense. It's not going to change the fact that Trevin Wallace can't get off blocks and that Christian Roseman was missing tackles and that Nick Scott's out here tripping guys and getting that personal foul penalty. It's not going to change any of that. Like, those guys have to execute. But also you have to coordinate and put guys in position, which right now I just don't see them being put in position to succeed. So, yeah, you can make a coordinator change, have a play caller change, all of that. But I don't really know how much is really going to change at this point in time until these guys just go out and execute. And also, maybe they get them to coordinate better. It's not a good situation, 1-3 yet again. But
let's end on a little bit of positivity. Like you mentioned, there's a bit of an opportunity ahead with some teams that you said are on similar level as them right now. How can they capitalize on teams like the Jets, the Dolphins, for example? Yeah, I mean, they are playing the dregs of the AFC East over the next couple of weeks. New England proved to not be one of those today in that 42-13 win. But Miami, who plays the Jets on Monday night, they could be an 0-4 team when they come to Bank of America Stadium on Sunday. So certainly a lot of questions about Mike McDaniel and his status there and whether some of those guys are going to really be engaged if they do lose that game to New York on Monday. So that you would think would be a game, especially at home, because they can't win on the road. They're 2-9 under Dave Canales on the road, that maybe they can get some home cooking, win that game. Don't imagine there's going to be a lot of Dolphins fans who are going to be traveling up to that game. So an actual home field advantage. Dallas, defensively, they've been terrible. So if the offense can click, it should be against the Cowboys. And then, well, the Jets are, well, the New York Jets. Yeah, the Jets. But it's on the road, and they can't win on the road. So maybe those are three games you look at.
they can win. Do I have any confidence that they will win? Of course, all three of them, no, but that they're going to come out 2-1 or in that situation, not really at this point in time, because I just have not seen consistency from this team other than being inconsistent. It's a week-to-week league. It can change very quickly, but through 4 weeks, there's a lot of questions about the Carolina Panthers here in 2025.
A lot to discuss, and we know it is just unfolding week after week in front of us, and we always will have a lot to talk about, it seems like. Julian Council from Locked On Panthers, thanks so much.